I'd like to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and 84% of everybody who watches these videos is not subscribed. So if you do enjoy today's video or any of the ones you might have seen here in the past, please consider subscribing, and thank you so much for watching. The stages from Melty Blood type Lumina that we've seen look like they're from a visual novel, and that's probably because they are, and I love it. And to understand why I like these static stages and what you might think are basic stages so much, let's go back to Street Fighter V for a second. In this game, they have dynamic stages, and the worst one you've probably seen is Rashid's stage. It's the one with the plane. It's called Skies of Honor, and the plane's like doing weird movements. It's moving left and right, up and down. It's flying through a city. The terrain's changing. There's so much going on in the background that you cannot play the game to your full capacity. Not to mention the performance issues that stages like this bring, especially if you're playing on old consoles, like if you're playing on the older PS4, not the Pro. Sometimes you can feel differences in FPS, especially online when you're playing on these kind of stages. Overall, this stage to me is one of the worst. It's very disorienting, the motion is annoying, and I just hate it so much. There's quite a few stages in this game like this. There's Kanzuki Beach, where it has little waves on the bottom, and this one also causes a lot of problems, a lot of FPS issues, as well as the fact that projectiles that roll across the ground, like Birdie's can, for example, used to get lost in the waves, I think. Like, the wave would just go over it, and then it'd be a big deterrent, you know? It's just a stage hazard, basically, at that point. Overall, just a laggy stage now. I think they have fixed that problem with the ground projectiles. But they haven't learned their lesson, right? Those two stages were in the game when it came out, but in 2020, they put out the CPT stage where it's like Gil and he's sitting on a couch, and then he has these weird like cult dudes behind him, and then behind them are like naked statues of all the characters, and behind them there's another layer, and it's like a gladiator fight going on, and behind that there's a crowd. And it's like, what the fuck is going on? Gil's sitting on the couch naked, and I'm trying to fight this guy with 16 layers of things rendering in the back. And that brings me to my next point. The fact that the things in the background are fully rendered. So if you Google the dojo stage from Street Fighter V, recently somebody took a free camera tool, and if you go out of the left door, there's an entire stage behind there that was unused, but still rendered in for some reason. It's an entire stage. It makes absolutely no sense. So like a running joke in my group that plays that game is like any stage that we play that's laggy in the background, we just assume that all of that shit is rendered in, fully textured, whatever it is. Like if the character wanted to break through and just run back there, he probably could, because all that shit is probably rendered in. And the saddest part is that it's usually these CPT stages that feel like the worst culprit, to be honest. They're stages that are supposed to celebrate like the competitive nature of the game, but they're unplayable. And in 2021, they came out with another CPT stage, and that shit has like gyrating rings behind it, and it's huge. Like the actual stage, the parts that you can't see are rendered in as well. It's a giant circle, like a giant gyroscope floating in the middle of nowhere, and there's a crowd behind it, and then there's these like rings floating around. It's just a bunch of moving parts for no reason. And it sucks because that's the only CPT thing that I paid for, because I like the color scheme, and I also really like the stage, but I can't use it. All this work and resources goes into these stages that cannot be played online and cannot be played on the consoles. And that brings us back to Melty Blood. The 2D static stages, with the most that we've seen moving is a water fountain that looks like a GIF pixel image, and I'm completely fine with that. I very much feel the same way about the stage that I feel about the UI. The less it interferes with my game, the better. If I don't even notice it, if I don't even notice what's going on in the background, great. That's what I want. I don't want crowds cheering and giant assets rendering in and things moving in the background and people screaming in the background. It's so weird to me that that's like a thing. And I think truly Guilty Gear Strive did a great job in that respect. There are things that move at times in that game, but they're not utterly distracting, and there are not very many of them. And if you don't like it, you can play stages that don't have insane movement in the background. But they do look great still. They look very nice and appealing to the viewers. And that's a very difficult balance to reach. I understand why the CPT stages have to look the way they do. I just don't understand why they have to move in that way, and they have to degrade performance in the way that they do. That stuff has led to like I think Team Spooky and like even the official CPT broadcast uses a mod to where they can emulate more desirable stages for the spectator, while the players actually play on the grid. They play on like the training stage because it's all they can use. It's very sad. So I'm glad to see that Type Lumina has static stages and stages that we can use all the time, right? If I pick a favorite stage, I can use that stage because it's probably not going to use a lot of assets, and it's not going to lag my game or lag my opponent's game. And hope to God, cross my fingers, the netcode allows for me to use whatever I want. You know, sometimes that is also an issue. In some stages on Street Fighter V, if it's lagging, the people in the background, like the characters in the background, will start lagging as well, and it becomes even worse. So on top of like FPS lag that the stage is causing, it's also like interacting with the lag in some weird way, some weird convoluted way that just really sucks. And I know some people are saying like the stages look like they're from a VN, right? I mentioned that earlier, but it's because they are. The Tsukihime series is a VN, right? It's a visual novel. That's why the backgrounds look like they're from a visual novel. It just makes sense. But if you come from other games like Guilty Gear, Street Fighter, and you're used to that like interactive or I guess dynamic background, I know the King of Fighters one is pretty interesting, right? Like it speeds up whenever the characters are getting hit. I think in KOF 13 I've seen that. Like if you hit somebody, the characters in the background start like moving really rapidly and like pretty crazy. But if you're used to that kind of thing, I guess I could kind of see why you feel like these are lackluster. But to me, one, it doesn't matter very much, and two, it's out of the way. It looks fine, it looks great, and I'm okay with it. I also think it fits the design of the entire game as well, right? The sprite-based characters look great. When you juxtapose these sprite-based characters against, I don't want to say hyper-realistic backgrounds, but like they just look like normal backgrounds. You know, they're static, almost like pictures back there or like GIFs, right? They're not anything crazy or fancy. When you put these nice characters against it, you can sort of see them come off of the stage, right? They're not blending in. You're not getting lost in the backgrounds with your characters. And I think it just looks very nice. And it's very easy to tell where everything is. Everything that you need to know. Basically, the biggest pet peeves I have are stages that lag and stages that have too much going on in the background. And this game doesn't seem to have any of that so far. And although we've only seen, I think we've only seen 2 or 3 stages in the little character reveals. I think we saw the school stage, and then we saw like the one with the fountain in the background. But if the other stages stick to that same design philosophy, then I'm very happy with that, and I'm very excited to see what else they have in store. But I'm sure they'll have like the oddball case. Like every game has a stage that lags a little bit more than it should and has to get banned. But I just hope that it's not too many. And I hope that I don't have to sit around and play the training stage like I do on Street Fighter V all the time. It does get a little bit boring, right? I'm not really paying attention to it too much, but I'd like to be able to use all the features of the game that I'm paying for. I don't think, if there is a stage that's laggy, I don't think it'll be the hardware that holds it back, because I'll be playing on PC. But it might be like the netcode or something. You know, we didn't get a beta test, so we don't actually know how well the netcode holds up. But, you know, cross your fingers, every GGPO or every rollback release, I should say, besides Street Fighter V has had a good release. They've had a good netcode. It just seems like whatever Capcom did to try and emulate GGPO just didn't work, and then they weren't interested in trying to fix it. So I'd say in the terms of netcode, the odds are in our favor. But anyways, that's going to be it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider subscribing, and thank you so much for watching.